Something happened in China in 2025 that caught the whole world off guard. A factory started making a brand new kind of battery. But here is the wild part. This battery does not use lithium at all. The main ingredient costs about $1 per pound at the store. You probably have a box of it in your kitchen right now. And yet this simple ingredient is powering a battery that does not catch fire, works in bitter cold, and can last almost 30 years of daily charging. The company behind it just landed the largest battery order anyone has ever seen. 60 gigawatt hours. That one deal is close to half of everything that company produced across all of 2025 combined. Meanwhile, American battery companies spent 3 decades betting everything on lithium. They had every chance to explore this other option. They passed. They called it a hobby, not a real technology. Now they are watching the ground shift under their feet. The ingredient that is doing all of this has been sitting on the periodic table the entire time. The answer was hiding in your salt shaker, and the story of how America missed it, and how China spent 10 years quietly solving the one problem that stood between a box of kitchen salt and a battery revolution, is one of the most important industrial stories of the last 30 years. But before we get to the company that made it happen, you need to understand why lithium ruled the world for so long that nobody was looking for anything else. Think back to the early 1990s. Phones were the size of bricks. Laptops weighed as much as a bowling ball. A video camera battery gave you maybe 1 hour if you were lucky. The idea of a phone that fit in your pocket and lasted all day sounded like something from a science fiction movie. Nobody could pack enough energy into a small enough space without making the battery so heavy it was useless. Then in 1991, a company in Japan called Sony released the first lithium battery for regular consumers. The amount of energy packed into every pound of battery jumped to about 3 times what it was before. Almost overnight, things got smaller. Phones got smarter. Electric cars started to look like a real possibility instead of a crazy dream. The wireless earbuds people wear today, the thin laptops on every coffee shop table, the electric cars parked in driveways, they all exist because of what Sony did that year. Why did lithium work so well? It comes down to 2 things. First, lithium atoms are super light. You can pack millions of them into a tiny space without adding much weight. Exactly what you need for something going inside a phone or a car. Second, lithium pushes a strong current. Each atom sends more power through the wire than almost any other element can. Light and powerful. The perfect recipe. For 30 years, the whole world chased lithium. Billions went into mining it from places like Australia and Chile. Factories got bigger. Prices came down year after year. Electric cars could drive farther with each new model. It seemed like lithium was the answer to every energy question, and nobody was looking for a different answer. Here is what most people will never hear about what that actually created. In American battery labs, questioning lithium was like questioning gravity. Nobody wanted to hear it. The money was flowing, the factories were humming, the cars were selling. Why mess with a good thing? That mindset is exactly what set the stage for what happened next. Because while American companies were busy perfecting lithium, someone else was quietly working on a completely different idea. The cracks in the lithium story were already there. They were just being ignored. In 2016, a company called Samsung made a phone called the Galaxy Note 7. Reviewers called it the best phone ever made. People lined up to buy it. Then within weeks, phones started catching fire. On desks, in pockets, on airplanes while they were flying. In one case, a phone caught fire on a nightstand while the owner slept just 2 feet away. Samsung had to pull every single phone off the market. Airlines around the world banned them. The recall cost Samsung $5 billion, one of the most expensive product disasters in history. Most people blamed Samsung for making a bad phone, but here is the part the news did not explain clearly. The fire risk was not just in that one phone. It was inside every lithium battery ever built. The liquid that carries energy through a lithium battery can burn. Not just a little. It can really catch fire if the battery gets too hot. gets punctured, or charges too fast. And it spreads. One cell catches fire. It heats the cell next to it. That cell catches fire and heats the next one. It rips through the entire battery pack like a row of matches going off, faster than any cooling system can stop it. Engineers call this thermal runaway. Everyone else just calls it a disaster. And that was only the first crack. Here is what happens to a lithium battery when the temperature drops below freezing. The tiny charged particles inside the battery stop flowing the way they should. They start sticking to the inside walls of the battery like little metal needles. Every time you charge the battery, those needles get slightly bigger. If they grow large enough, they can short-circuit the battery from the inside, which creates heat and starts the exact same fire problem we just talked about. Even when the needles never reach that point, cold weather still wrecks your range. At the freezing mark, a lithium battery loses a significant chunk of its promised distance. Not because anything broke, just because the air outside got cold. For someone driving an electric car in Minnesota in January, that can mean losing more than 100 miles of range on a morning when they need every single mile. Every electric car owner in a cold climate knows this. They talk about it in parking lots and in online groups. The brochures never mention it, but winter shows the truth every single year. And then there was the price problem that most people outside the industry never tracked closely. Between 2020 and 2022, the price of lithium itself went completely out of control. It jumped to 8 times what it cost before, in just 24 months. Then in 2023, it crashed by 70% in a single year. The entire future of clean energy had been built on something that moved its price like a casino game. American companies kept pushing lithium anyway. But across the Pacific, someone was paying close attention to every one of those cracks. And the answer they found had been sitting in plain sight for 60 years. Long before lithium became the star of the battery world, scientists in the 1960s were studying a different element. It sits right below lithium on the periodic table. It acts in similar ways chemically. It is one of the most abundant elements in the ocean. You know it as table salt. The scientific name for the useful part of salt is sodium. Here is the fact that most people will never hear. The first rechargeable battery that packed serious energy was not a lithium battery. It was a sodium battery. Ford Motor Company built it in 1966. It was genuinely impressive in a laboratory, but it had one enormous problem. It had to run at around 300 degrees Celsius. That is hot enough to melt lead. Nobody was putting something that hot under the hood of a family car. So the idea sat there. Interesting, but useless in the real world. Then in 1972, a scientist named Stanley Whittingham figured out how to make a lithium battery work at normal room temperature. That single discovery changed everything. Lithium jumped ahead of sodium and never looked back. When Sony started selling commercial lithium batteries in 1991, the race was basically over. Over the next 30 years, more than $1 trillion went into lithium technology globally. Sodium got put on a shelf, not because anyone proved it was worse, just because nobody wanted to spend the money to prove it could be better. But sodium had one specific problem that drove researchers crazy for the next 40 years. Sodium atoms are about 35% bigger than lithium atoms. Inside a battery, atoms have to slide in and out of a storage material thousands of times without breaking it. Lithium fits perfectly between the layers of graphite, the same material inside your pencil. The fit is so clean that lithium can slide in and out almost forever without wearing anything down. Sodium atoms were just too big. Every time one tried to squeeze into graphite, it cracked the structure apart. After a few hundred charges, the battery was dead. The energy was real. The chemistry worked. But the storage material could not handle the size of the atoms. That one problem shut down serious sodium battery research for 40 straight years. American companies looked at it and said no thanks. Lithium was working. Lithium was making them money. Why risk billions on salt? That reasoning made complete sense from a financial standpoint in 1995. It looks completely different in 2025. In the year 2000, a small team in Canada was working with a material called hard carbon. Hard carbon is made by heating plant waste to very high temperatures in sealed containers with no oxygen. What comes out looks nothing like the neat, organized graphite inside a pencil. Graphite has clean layers stacked like a deck of cards. Hard carbon is a completely random jumble. Pockets and gaps of all different sizes scattered everywhere. Under a microscope, it looks like someone shook a box of carbon atoms and they froze wherever they landed. Messy, random. At first glance, useless for anything precise. But those messy pockets happen to be exactly the right size to hold sodium atoms. Sodium can slide in and out of hard carbon thousands of times without breaking anything. Because there is no neat structure to break, the atoms just drop into whatever pocket fits them. When the battery delivers power, they slide right back out. Simple, elegant, and it solved the problem that had stumped the entire field for 40 years. The answer was there, but getting it out of a Canadian lab and into a real battery factory was a completely different problem, and a much more expensive one. Hard carbon has one serious flaw. It soaks up moisture like a sponge. The same messy structure that makes it perfect for holding sodium atoms also makes it grab water from the air. Even a tiny amount of water inside a battery reacts with the liquid inside and creates gases that destroy the cell from the inside out. In a laboratory with small batches and careful handling, you can keep things dry enough to make it work. But in a factory producing thousands of batteries every day for electric cars and power grids, this is a completely different challenge. You cannot guarantee that every single battery comes out perfectly dry at industrial scale. The risk is too high, the cost of getting it wrong is too high, and the money needed to solve it was far beyond anything a university lab or small startup could handle. So for 20 years, the discovery just sat there. American labs wrote papers about it. Japanese companies ran small tests. European universities applied for grants. Everyone agreed the science was genuinely interesting. Nobody wanted to commit the billions of dollars needed to turn interesting science into a real manufactured product at scale. Potential does not build factories. Potential does not put batteries in cars. What was needed was a company with serious money, a long time horizon, and a willingness to take a risk that every major player in the Western battery industry had already looked at and walked away from. American companies had the money. They chose not to use it on this. They stuck with lithium because lithium felt safe. Lithium was known. Lithium was generating returns. Around 2015, a company in China made a different choice. The company is called CATL, Contemporary Amperex Technology Company Limited, based in Fujian Province. They are the biggest battery manufacturer on the planet by a wide margin. Most Americans have never heard of them. That is part of this story. Around 2015, CATL decided to spend approximately $1.5 billion over 10 years to solve the hard carbon problem. Not study it, not publish a paper about it. Solve it. The manufacturing problem, the moisture problem, the precision problem, and turn the result into something that could be built at scale and shipped to real customers. American battery companies were putting that same money into making lithium factories bigger and lithium cells cheaper. CATL was putting it into something the rest of the world had publicly called a science fair project. Here is what they actually did to solve it. The first fix was changing the chemistry of the hard carbon surface so that it would repel water instead of absorbing it. The parts of the material that naturally pulled in moisture were modified to behave more like a raincoat, letting water roll right off rather than soaking in. This was not a small adjustment. It required years of materials science work to do consistently across industrial-scale production. The second fix was controlling the size of the pockets inside the hard carbon with extraordinary precision across millions of cells. Pockets that were too small could not hold enough sodium atoms to store useful amounts of energy. Pockets that were too large wasted space and reduced efficiency. Getting the size exactly right, consistently, at scale, required a level of manufacturing control that took years to develop and significant capital to execute. The result is a battery CATL calls the Natrium, and the numbers it delivers are not incremental improvements over lithium, they are in a different category. In a real electric car, the Natrium delivers over 310 miles of range on a single charge. You can get to 80% charge in just 15 minutes. It can handle more than 10,000 full charge cycles before performance starts to decline, about 3 times longer than the lithium batteries it is competing against. If you charge this battery once every single day without stopping, it would still be working after 27 years. By the time the battery slows down, the car around it will likely have been scrapped twice already. Cold weather performance is where sodium stops being impressive and starts being embarrassing for lithium. The liquid inside the Natrium stays fluid at temperatures as low as -58 degrees Celsius, colder than the coldest temperature ever recorded in mainland Alaska. At -40 degrees Celsius, the battery still holds 90% of its full charge. Read that number carefully, 90%, at temperatures where a lithium battery would be barely functional. For people who drive electric cars in cold climates, this is not a mild upgrade. This is the difference between a car that actually works through winter and a car that sits in the garage for 4 months. Then the number that changes everything at the industry level. CATL is producing sodium cells for approximately $19 per kilowatt hour. Lithium cells cost between $55 and $70 per kilowatt hour. That is not a small efficiency gain. That is a battery costing roughly 3 times less being manufactured right now at full industrial scale for real paying customers. This is the battery behind that 60 gigawatt-hour deal. And this is why American companies are now in the uncomfortable position of trying to catch up to a technology they had access to the entire time. The problems with lithium were not hidden. They were written in research papers for decades. The fire risk was documented by 2005. The cold weather degradation was well understood by 2010. The supply chain concentration risk was obvious by 2015. All of it was published. All of it was available. The industry simply chose not to look. When a technology is working well enough and the money is flowing, industries stop asking whether something better might exist. That is not a Chinese problem or an American problem. It is a human one. But the consequences in this case land very specifically. Chinese electric cars built on sodium batteries can be priced at levels American manufacturers cannot match using lithium, and the gap in raw material cost is too large to design or engineer around. The American power grids being built right now with taxpayer money are going in with lithium storage systems that Chinese factories are already moving past. The 60 gigawatt-hour deal in 2025 was not just a contract. It was a signal that the map of global energy had just been redrawn, and the new center is not in Detroit or Silicon Valley. The future of energy was sitting in your salt shaker the entire time. China found it. China spent the money. China built the factories. And now the rest of the world is figuring out what to do about a 3 times cost advantage that did not have to happen this way. So here is the question worth sitting with. If a sodium-powered electric car cost half the price of a lithium one and performed better in winter, would you buy it? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story changed how you think about the battery inside your car or your phone, hit like and subscribe, because the next chapter of this story is already being written.